Hey now, Brawlers, it's time for another Board Game Brawl review with Nick Minahan, sponsored by BoardGameBliss.com.
Hey people, today we're going to take a look at Mystic Vale from AEG. This is I'll say it's a deck building game, but that's really not doing it justice. There are deck building elements in this game, and thematically it's you and a bunch of other druids trying to build up your mana and cast spells, and there is a story blurb in the beginning that I didn't really delve into. The theme is kind of light as you actually play, but regardless, you are building a deck with some traditional deck building elements. A deck card will go into your discard pile, and eventually you'll draw it again. But that's pretty much where the comparisons stop, because this is also a card building game. These cards, the starting decks in the game, must be sleeved because you're actually going to be putting templates into the sleeves to build up the cards. Honestly, it's just easier if I show you what the hell I'm talking about. So let's go ahead and get right to it with a brief look at how the game is played. Then we're going to come back. I'll let you know what I think.
Mystic Vale is a competitive card game for 2 to 4 players. The goal is to have the most points by the end of the game. The end of the game is triggered when the pile of victory point chips run out, at which point you finish out the round with each player getting an equal amount of turns. There is an unusual but important bit of setup you must do before your very first game. Mystic Vale comes with a set of large card sleeves suitable for the cards in the game, but only the 4 sets of 20 card player starting decks must be sleeved. This is not for protective purposes. The cards must be sleeved in order to utilize one of the important aspects of the game, card building. Each starting deck is exactly the same except for the backs, and consists of 8 blank cards, 3 cards that have Fertile Soil, and 9 cards that have Cursed Land. Notice that those 2 abilities on the cards are in different positions, either on the top, middle, or bottom. During the game, you'll be gaining advancement cards. These are mostly clear cards with 1 image and ability in one of the 3 spots on the card. During the game, you'll be acquiring these cards and sliding them into one of your existing starting cards, assuming there's an open spot on the card for it. That's why you need the sleeves. Each player will take their deck and shuffle it. Then you start drawing cards from the deck and putting them face up in a row near your deck. Keep doing this until you draw your 3rd Cursed Land card, which you will leave face up on your deck as an on-deck card. This is actually how your draws will work throughout the game. More on that in a minute. Each player also gets a double-sided mana token, with the spent gray side showing. One of those tokens has a star on the side, indicating the starting player. If this token is on its active side during the game, you can flip it over to get an extra mana, which is the currency of the game. A pool of victory point chips with a quantity determined by the number of players is made, with the rest going back in the box. A stack of Fertile Soil advancements will be available to all players. There are copies for all 3 positions, and if you ever take one, you'll take the one that you want from the stack. Take a random number of level 1 advancements, again depending on the number of players, shuffle them, and then flip 3 of them face up next to the stack. Do the same thing with the level 2 and 3 cards, except that you'll use all of those. Finally, the Vale cards. There are 2 decks, level 1 and 2. Shuffle them separately and flip 4 cards over from each. Turns take place in phases. When it's your turn, first is planting. With the cards laid out in front of you, you can either pass or push. If you pass, that means you're happy with the cards that are in front of you, and you'll move on to the next phase. If you push, that means you want to risk losing what you have in order to have an even better turn. Take the top card off your deck and add it to the row. Then flip over another on-deck card. If you have not spoiled, you can continue doing this until you want to stop. What you're trying to do here is get as many mana symbols as possible, and possibly get some of the special cards that you may purchase later, which are put back into your deck. You spoil, however, if there are ever 4 red decay symbols showing, including on top of your deck. When this happens, you cannot harvest mana, and you immediately go to the discard phase. Effectively, you bust. Some effects will mitigate this, like green growth symbols, which can cancel out decay symbols. Assuming you do get to the harvest phase, however, you will add up all of your mana symbols and potentially use them to buy up to 2 advancements from the lineups for the mana indicated, after resolving any of your own advancements that have harvest phase abilities. More on that in a sec. Advancements are sometimes worth points at the end of the game, indicated by a gray token shape in the bottom corner, while other times the advancement gives you victory point tokens right away when you play the card. They may also have other written special abilities. When you first purchase the advancement, it sits out until the discard phase, when you will slide it into a card that has an open slot in your lineup. Lastly, some advancements have Vale symbols on them. You can spend the Vale symbols you've accumulated to buy up to 2 Vale cards from the lineup. They do not go into your deck, rather they are just put in front of your player area. Some are just worth points, while others have special abilities once per turn. But each has a unique cost and a combination of these Vale symbols, so you need to plan your deck accordingly. The next phase is the discard phase, where you will finally sleeve your new advancements, replenish advancements, and Vale cards in the lineups, and so on. The final phase is prep, where you will draw cards from your deck in the same way that you already have in preparation for your next turn, when you will do it all over again. If this was the final turn of the game because the gem pile is gone, everyone adds up the points tokens they've acquired, plus inherent point bonuses on cards you've acquired. Whoever has the most points is the winner.
Mystic Vale is an excellent game. This is one of the best games I have played all year long. Now, it's no secret if you're a fan of my channel that I love deck building games. I've done several top 10 deck building games lists. It's just a genre or a type of game mechanism that I really, really love. And I've been perfectly content to play many deck building games that are very similar to one another. You have cards, you have starting deck, cards come out either in a randomized lineup or in set piles, and you just try to get points. That's it. But what I have loved the most about the deck building mechanism is how it has been utilized in either games that are bigger in scope, like let's say Mage Knight and Star Trek Frontiers, but also games that are still modest in scope and size, but manage to do some really, really interesting and intriguing things with that one mechanism, spiraling it out into something much more unique and interesting, and that is exactly what is going on with Mystic Vale. When I first heard the premise of the game, that it was, oh, you're sleeving cards and putting templates in, I'm like, we ain't having it. It's not going to work. I mean, it's just a gimmick. It's a dumb gimmick. It's probably going to be a big pain in the ass to play. And to be sure, I don't like having to sleeve my games right off the bat. And it can be a little bit tricky. I mean, you have to peel the plastic film off of some of the cards as you play for the first couple of games. And, it's a bit of a pain during the game to put them in. Okay, fine. But that is as it turns out, it's a minor nitpicky thing. It is not that big a deal, especially in the face of the fact that so much of the rest of the game is great. Because what it's doing here is, well, let's start from the beginning. I always talk about components and theme and things like that. So then we'll get into the mechanisms. And stuff that I don't like. There's a couple things. As far as the theme goes, I was already mentioned in my intro, theme is very light here. There is a story in the book, but it's fairly irrelevant. And to be fair to Mystic Vale, most deck building games are like that. Now, there are other deck building games that, like, let's say Marvel Legendary and the Legendary Encounters games, which manage to spin out the theme quite a bit more because they're much more complex, but consequently, things like setup time are much more complex. And this game is rather simple. It's very easy to set up and very easy to learn and to teach. And so that's one of the things you have to sacrifice is a very in-depth, complex theme when you have a game like this. So I'm perfectly fine with it in this particular case. Whereas in other cases, theme is much more important to me. Regarding the components, I said, as I mentioned before, that it is a little bit of a pain to sleeve the game and to have to slide the cards in and out and to peel the plastic film off, but it's not that big a deal. And the sleeves seem to be pretty high quality. We've played a few games of this, and none of them have ripped or anything like that. There's a few extra in the box if you're really concerned about it. And I'm pretty sure these are either 7 Wonders sized or close to it. So I think it shouldn't be a problem for you to get more if you really need them. The card quality is good, which is good for the Vale cards, which do not get sleeves. And while the artwork on the advancement cards is by necessity kind of muddled because it's just imprinted onto the plastic sheet, it looks good. It's just kind of muddy looking. The artwork on the Vale cards is amazing. It's really, really good. And I feel like they probably could have skimped on that if they wanted to, But they didn't. They made really beautiful pieces of artwork for that, which really helps bring about the appearance of the game, so that when you see this game on the table, it looks like nothing else compared with when you add it to everything else that's going on with the plastic advancements, cards, quote unquote, and everything else. So really no problems with the components at all. So moving on to the mechanisms, again, deck building, love that, but it's deck building mixed with push your luck. So it's almost literally like blackjack, but really more complex blackjack. But again, not a hard game to figure out. You have to make this very, very important decision every single round. Am I going to be able to get what I want this round? Or even if I can get kind of what I want, do I really want this particular card? But to do that, am I willing to push? Am I willing to risk spoiling in order to get what I really want? And that's where card counting comes into play, which might be annoying in some other games, but it's very interesting here. Because now you're running the odds, like, I haven't drawn 2 of my cursed lands. So I know 2 of them are still in this deck. But I have 8 cards. What are the odds I'm going to draw one of those? But you have to make these decisions. And I found that if you don't risk, it's very easy to play it safe. In the first game of this I did play it safe, and while I did well, I lost. The person who risked all the time, almost every single turn, ended up winning. Because even though she had some setbacks, and did bust a couple of times, the turns where she pushed and it worked out for her worked amazingly. She was able to get awesome cards because of that. And I feel like that's what you need to do in this game. And it adds another level of tension to it. And you might say, but Nick, that's like a level of randomness I don't want on top of the other, the randomness of a normal deck building game. But I don't know, it works here. In addition to the mana token, which can really help you out because by busting it recharges that. And then, of course, there's the special abilities on the cards and the special abilities on the Vale cards. There are ways to mitigate this. And I was really surprised by how close games were that I didn't really feel were close. But because you're risking and giving it your all in order to get a couple of killer cards. Other people might be doing the sort of slow and steady thing, but might be doing very well, getting cards that give you that generate victory point tokens, for instance. It's also, there's a lot of decision making in this game. On top of that decision making, you also have putting the advancements into your sleeves, because it's not that simple. It's just like, blank card, obviously put it there. Well, hold on, because do you want to spread out your advancements over a bunch of cards, or do you want to make a couple of really awesome cards so that when you do draw them, you're probably going to have a pretty decent turn? What if you only draw one of those awesome cards and it's not that great? Would it be better to spread them all out? What if you end up with a bunch of blank cards that you still have that do nothing for you? So there's a really interesting sort of balance that you have to strike with how you put your advancements in. And the advancements that you choose to buy. Like, how much do you want to invest in mitigating your spoilage, but you're giving up other great abilities potentially from the other cards that are out there? And how much do you want to focus on the Vale cards? The Vale cards can be great points, and they can have good special abilities, but now you're focusing on a whole other thing. Now you have to worry about the Vale symbols that are on the advancement cards, which means, again, you could be giving up cards that just generate points because you're going in that direction. So, and this is what I want to stress here. It makes, what I'm saying probably makes this sound more complex than it is. But this is a very, very simple game to learn and to play, and it's fast, too. I think the box, well, I could tell you, or maybe I can't tell you, maybe it's on the other half of this box. But I think it says 45 minutes to an hour, and that's actually pretty accurate. I think your first game is probably going to be maybe an hour or a little bit more just figuring out the kinks, but after that, easily 45 minutes, because while there are a lot of decisions to be made, it's all right there, and it's all very intuitive, and it makes sense to me. So again, if I could say that there's problems, it's that it has the same sort of randomness that other deck building games have, plus the push your luck aspect, which some people are just not going to like, and I played it with at least one person who definitely did not, but was only okay with deck building in the first place. This was just a bridge too far for him. On top of that, I can see this getting a little bit stale if I played it like 10-15 times, because there's not a ton of variety amongst the advancement cards. But the good news there is that assuming this game does well financially, there is a lot of room to expand. So while I wish there was more diversity now amongst the Vale cards as well, I can see it getting a lot of stuff added to it. I can see the game going in interesting directions, new elements and expansion modules added on. There's a lot of room to grow here, and I'm not making a pun about this being about druids. Although, if you want to, there you go. But still, regardless of all that, my complaints about the game are minor to me personally. It's great. It really is. I was surprised by this game, pleasantly surprised. Great deck building, great push your luck, great artistry, even if the theme isn't all that strong, and just a unique experience. And honestly, even though I haven't been in board gaming my entire life, already I can tell I'm seeing a lot of the same games with a different skin on them over and over again. This is a unique property, and I don't even know if other people will even be willing to copy it, because it would be so blatant. That's how unique it is. But Mystic Vale, I highly, highly recommend it. If you have any inclination towards deck building or just want to play something unique and innovative.
Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. And make sure to check out our sponsor, Board Game Bliss, where you can find an amazing selection of games from around the world. BoardGameBliss.com. Thanks for your support.